Olá, sejam bem-vindos. Vamos dar início à nossa rodada de 2021 com uma pausa para café. A pausa para café será meia hora de conversa com os nossos convidados, os nossos associados, os nossos parceiros e todas as pessoas que nós consideramos que são uma mais-valia para trocar ideias connosco e nos dizerem como vai o franchising em Portugal e à volta do mundo. Hoje tenho aqui um convidado especial para abrir esta jornada de pausas para café. Vou ter aqui connosco o Alisdair. O Alisdair é, na realidade, o executivo, o CEO da Federação Europeia de Franchising. Esta primeira rodada esta pausa para café vai ser em inglês, uma vez que o Alisdair não fala português. Mas qualquer questão ou qualquer dúvida que tenham, não hesitem depois em contactar-nos. Hi, Alisdair. How are
Hello.
you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm a bit cold. It's snowing behind me.
Okay. That's nice.
If I'm shivering, that's why.
Okay. So we are also in the winter time anyway, so it's not so cold because
No.
it's not snowing. But anyway, it's still very cold for us. But thank you very much to accept my invitation to be with
Thank
us.
you.
This is the first approach for Stop for a Coffee, and I'm very glad that you accept our invitation. And I would like to start. Can you briefly say who is Alisdair to us?
Okay, so I'm nearly 50. I'm half UK, half Malaysian.
Okay.
I grew up in America and in Africa, but and I came to Belgium at the end of the 90s to work in public affairs and government lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never left. So I've always been in Brussels doing this kind of job. Along the way, I've worked as a consultant in public affairs with companies like McDonald's, then also with retailers in the UK like Tesco.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I worked a lot in the retail sector. And I set up as a consultant myself, actually with my own business about 12 years ago. And since that time, I've been working with a lot of European associations, advising them on how to, how to work with the European Union. So how to do campaigning and how to represent themselves and how to communicate with the different individuals in the different organizations in the European Union. So I was appointed by the EFF at the end of last year. And I'm now kind of on my own here as the executive director of the European Franchise Federation. And I'm really looking forward to working with such active and energetic members as yourself in hopefully doing something really interesting for this sector. I'm really looking forward to working with these companies, actually. It seems a very dynamic and innovative group of businesses. So
Very good. So it's very good for us to know that we're now going to have someone that could actually help us through once the franchising has been not in the top of mind positions of our leaders, European leaders. So it's good to have someone that could be more close to and help us with our business model. So great to know. So very welcome and very glad to have you on board. This is your first time working in the franchising business? Is this your first approach?
Yeah, this is my first time working with these types of businesses. I mean, when I did some work with McDonald's, it was a long time ago. At that point, McDonald's was actually trying to merge with Quick. And so the idea was, let's get the franchisees rather involved in actually creating a stronger message that this was a good thing. The deal was being put in front of European competition authorities. So the idea was to try and create a little bit more of a kind of support for it. So that was just one experience I had of working with the franchisee side of the business of the industry. But since then, yeah, that's my only time. I mean, I've worked in a lot of stores, you know, when I was a student and younger, you know, where I've worked in quick service restaurants and what have you, hotels. So I mean, I understand the model, but you know, first time really working directly for the industry as such. Yeah.
So this is going to be a good challenge anyway.
Yeah, it is.
Now, what we know that we're in a unique situation, and this pandemic is all over the world, but actually no one has any experience living and trying to do business with this new environment. But what your expectation for 2021 in Europe regarding the franchising industry?
Well, I mean, obviously for everyone, it's a super tough economic climate, but that's demanded a lot of adaptability. It's demanded a lot of determination and innovation by all businesses, and I think the franchising model kind of lends itself quite well to that. And I think these are a lot of very robust businesses. So I think, you know, despite the fact that, you know, it's difficult at the moment to be positive about anything, I think we can be positive that we've got a really strong model that can actually get us through this in the future. And I think there is some indications that more and more people are gravitating towards the franchise model. People want to actually come into this industry because they see the benefits of having the support and the mentoring and, you know, the kind of the transfer of the know-how, and that kind of partnership, I think, is something that can actually lend itself really well to coming out of a crisis. When we come out of that crisis, I can't obviously say, but I'm hoping towards Q3, Q4 of this year, we will enter back into something that we used to think of normality. So I'm hoping around the autumn, you know, when the vaccine rollout really starts to get, you know, cover enough people, that we will go back to normal, and that this sector will really be able to take on that challenge so well, because it will be really well prepared to do it. So those are my hopes for this year.
Yeah, no doubt. We all very key in to become lasting pandemic environment, and we are kind of desperate. The economy is suffering a lot. We know that this is not particularly to our country, but it's all over the world, and hopefully the franchising will be the option for most of the people that need to approach a different way of doing, having work or doing business. So
yeah,
we will be very key in to come to that time very probably, as you said, in the third or fourth quarter of this year, but hopefully it's going to be
hopefully even earlier. Yeah,
just close to summer.
Yeah, exactly.
So assuming the role for just 1 month, you have just start on EFF.
Yes. Yeah.
What are the goals for this first year?
I mean, my personal goal, first of all, is just to kind of get to know the members. And so it's really, really helpful actually to have this kind of conversation with you and this interaction with you. So thank you for actually giving me that opportunity. But also I'd like to survey the members a lot more and really understand. It's not just about me understanding, but it's also explaining to the outside world at a European level, how is our industry actually doing and how are people thinking, what are people feeling? I think there's some really interesting messages that we can actually bring out from our companies and explain to the outside world. But if you like, I've got 4 key goals for the EFF this year. One is to really pick up our representation and our lobbying function. So to make sure that we've got a really strong message to government. And so there's a lot of things we need to work on anyway, which are things like the review of the block exemption, which is obviously going to regulate the way all franchising operates across Europe. But also there's other things around COVID and around how governments are actually supporting this industry that I think we need to be having more conversations with government on. And not just in Brussels, but we need to do that everywhere, but let's do that in a coordinated way so that we're saying the same things to the same people, and it's much more aligned and much more coherent. So that's I think that's, you know, my number one challenge, is to actually create that situation and to make sure that that delivers. Secondly, and actually probably equally important, is the creation of a community. You all have been saying to me that, you know, we want to talk to each other more. We want to learn from each other more. And I think, you know, when you're in a pandemic, particularly, people need to have that kind of support. And so, you know, there are people in the same situation as you in all the other 27 member states of the European Union, plus other countries, the UK, Switzerland, Turkey. We can all be sharing these kind of experiences with each other. So it's to really create those platforms where franchisees and franchisors can come together across Europe and talk to each other and learn from each other. So that's something we're going to do. Already we're going to be doing that on a monthly basis. Every Friday, the first Friday of every month, we will do a webinar with all of our members. Everyone is invited to that. But I think we want to do much more than just that. We actually want to make sure that there's a living, breathing sector and that you're all talking to each other. So that's really important, is to create that community. The third thing is to create a really strong brand and our brand identity online particularly. So, you know, just to have a completely new website, a much more powerful social media presence. We're just going to start that off on LinkedIn by just having, you know, a much more, you know, just much more feedback on what our weekly activities are. It's early days. I've only got 100 followers on my EFF LinkedIn page, but, you know, I want to build that every month. I want to have, you know, 50, 100 every month coming through so that, you know, by the end of this year, we've got a really strong online community following us and a very strong brand that people can relate to. And the last kind of priority for me is to create, as part of our website, what we're going to call the Gateway to Europe. And that's really about allowing companies in whatever country, let's say Portuguese franchisors interested in maybe moving to the Swedish market, to have a really clear understanding via our website. What are the issues in Sweden that they need to know? What's the economy looking like at the time? Who are the key people that they need to talk to in government as well as in the industry? And how can they get help from specialists, consultants, lawyers, whoever it might be, so that they can understand the local culture? Because obviously that's so important to the growth of this industry in Europe, is really understanding the local culture and how it operates. And that, I think that's what separates Europe from America in terms of the franchise industry, is the importance of local culture and local brands. So that's really what, those are my four key goals for 2021. We've set them out in an action plan, which we're going to present to our members next week in our board. Then obviously to share that with all of our members who might be interested, just so you can have a very clear idea, a very transparent view as to what we're doing, when we're doing it, and why we're doing it, and what a good outcome should look like for all of the things that we do.
It's nice to see. I had a conversation this morning with one of our members that has also been present on our last webinar that we have done in the beginning of this month. And he was very concerned about the way the government is leading all the process. Of course, we know there's a lot of input trying to save business, but more the franchisee business, because no one thinks about the franchisor as also a business. And if the franchisor cannot handle his own company, the franchisees are going to suffer. All the market's going to suffer. So it makes sense that we actually work together. And the combination is also going to understanding we are in a European common market. And why you see different ways of behaving with the sectors when you go from one country to another. And it's very impressive, because one of the things we do have also is we are a small country, and we have some brands that actually go internationally. And when we go internationally, first of all, we think in Europe. And only after we'll think go outside of Europe, and majorly we go to Brazil or to Africa, where we used to have the Portuguese colonies and Portuguese speaking countries. But anyway, we first of all need to look to Europe. And when we look to Europe, sometimes it's very hard for us to understand how the laws are made, what is actually the benefits from one country to another. And this is really a very important information, and also very helpful for us to lobby here in our country with our government.
Yeah, I
Understand
mean,
how the other countries goes and what's the
yes.
benefits, and bringing that inside to our own country. So no
Yeah.
doubt,
No, I
very
mean,
good.
Christina, that's a very strong point, because I think, you know, despite the fact that we're in a European single market, there are literally thousands of national regulations that affect all of the businesses across the franchise industry and across our membership. And, you know, so many of those are obviously local knowledge. And so for an outsider, if you like, coming into that market, it is very, very challenging. So, you know, while we can't provide the answers as the EFF to some of those things, we can at least be someone that puts everybody in touch with everybody else and makes that easy for the industry to actually grow. And so I think that's not going to be something we manage to achieve overnight, but we do want to get to a position where we can actually be connecting people with other people very, very quickly and helping them overcome some of these barriers and obstacles to growing their businesses across the European Union, but also, as I mentioned, into some of the other countries, like the UK, Switzerland, and Turkey as well, for instance.
Just this week, one of our Portuguese brands, Nata Lisboa, has just opened a franchisee in Poland.
Mm.
And it's amazing how we can do it. Of course, they could not travel to Poland to the open store, to the grand opening, and even the franchisee could actually not open effectively as we were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So he's only selling through home delivering goods.
Right.
So, but at the same time, the situation is, how can the franchisor help this franchisee if he actually doesn't know how the regulation or what's the benefit the government is giving, and all the issues that could be helping the franchisee go through. Actually, the franchisor doesn't have access to that information because he's not from Poland, he's Portuguese. So this cross networking and cross information is really very useful, and not only in the pandemic time, but always.
Well, that's a really interesting example. I would be very interested to see how that works out, and actually to hear from this franchisor in a few months. You know, how did you manage that? You know, that must be so challenging to open your business in a place you can't even
go to. We had a
to.
store ready in September. So we keep waiting, and he cannot handle anymore, and doesn't make any sense because, of course, he has costs. So he has many things to face. So they made the decision as a franchisor and the franchisee to open in the middle of the pandemic, even knowing that's not going to be the right time to do it. But close is even worse. So the decision was, we need to go. So hopefully it will go fine. They will make through. But anyway, make us look to the business and say, what a tough time to do it. But
well, good luck to them. I keep my fingers crossed for their success, because that's a super tough challenge they've got in front of them.
Yes. So what are talking about challenges, what are the biggest challenges for EFF now?
Well, I think, you know, we need to wake the industry back up again to the fact that the EFF is here. Because I think, you know, it's the way that the EFF was functioning before, you know, was fine for a certain type of offer, which was just essentially focused around, you know, some of the political activities that they wanted to do in Brussels. But I think what the members have said to me is, let's create that community. It's a much bigger thing than just about what's happening in Brussels and meetings in Brussels and what have you. So it's really just meeting those expectations, because it's always easy when you're new to come into something and make lots of promises about, things will be much better. But actually, you know, it's now delivering on that, you know. So it's just making sure that that in this time next year, we've actually kept people's interest, and that they're willing to give up their time for the EFF, give up their time for the other members, because that's what it's all about, is making sure members are interacting with each other and benefiting from each other and learning from each other, and then that we're capturing those experiences so that they're not just lost, that we can actually then use them to actually inform other people, or simply just to explain why is it of benefit to be in a trade association at European level. Because the tendency, I think, at the moment is just to kind of think about what's happening in one's own market. Understandably, particularly when we can't leave our houses, we probably becomes even more of a kind of a habit that we take on. So I think at a European level, it's to prove our relevance and to demonstrate our relevance. That's going to be the biggest challenge for us.
So this is good news for us anyway, because actually we are desperate for this type of cross networking and cross help whenever it's needed. And we are now in the situation that I think all the European countries are needed. So on this matter, what can the association's members of EFF need to do or need to make as a more value for the franchising business in Europe? What can we do as an association to help EFF getting this way through?
Well, I think that because we're kind of starting from such a low base, the initial thing is just about communication and just about talking to each other and just about raising problems that we're having in the way that we're running our business, in the way that we're working with our franchisee, or vice versa, problems that we might be having in terms of local regulation, any issues that we think are relevant to others, and hearing how others are dealing with those things, and speaking to others who might be on the other side of the discussion. So if you're a franchisor with the franchisee, but in other markets as well. So being able to give up your time to do that, I mean, it's we kind of take it for granted a little bit, I think, sitting in Brussels, that people actually have real jobs, running real businesses, dealing with their everyday challenges, that we just assume that they'll want to join our webinars because, aren't we wonderful? So it's really the fact that people are willing to give up their time. I really appreciate that. And I'm not going to take it for granted. And I'm going to try and make the most of the information and the things that I hear. So I would just ask all of our members just to give up your time initially. Make time for these things. You will see that it's worth it. The onus is on me to create the opportunities for you to communicate, but it's also on me to make sure that there's a proper follow-up so that you can actually see how your words and your thoughts can then go on to have a longer impact in the way that the franchise industry is actually run and the way it is actually viewed by others. And that's really my key goal at the moment, is to make sure that happens.
Okay, very good. I did have the last question for you, but I actually think you have already answered to them. But if you want to fill up with any more information that it could help us understanding what it could EFF do for us, once we actually felt very, I don't say that in a pity way, but we felt very lonely. The only objective that we could actually see as value belonging to EFF on this last couple of years, or it could be more than last a couple, it was majorly the fact that we could belong to WFC, to the World Franchising Council. So that was the major focus for us. Right. And that was the most value thing that we could bring to our association, was those meetings in WFC. Now EFF has a huge responsibility trying to make the value of the EFF be beyond the WFC. So do you want to add any information, say, or any other thing to say what actually can you bring to us?
Well, look, that's absolutely my key goal. is to make sure that people see us as relevant. And also, if you're a smaller market, a smaller association, that you've still got a stake in what happens in the EFF, and you have a say in what happens in the EFF, and that your contribution is massively valued. So I think as long as people see that and hear that, and that we act on it, then I think you will kind of feel more positive towards the EFF and positive towards giving up your time for the EFF. So that really is a massive objective, because we have to create the community, and the community has to involve everybody. And I really would like everybody to be involved in this. And any members who have stepped out of EFF in recent years, I want to try and persuade those people to come back, because we really need everybody on board.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Alisdair, it has been fantastic to speak with you just this half an hour. Time for a coffee for us. So
okay, enjoy
we
your
made
coffee.
Coffee very worthwhile. And it was amazing that we could start with the first approach on this new idea, and it was done with the EFF new executive director. So very welcome.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you.
I hope we will see you on the next webinar. It's going to be in the next month, and following all those new steps that EFF wants to make as a difference for all of us. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina.
And we will be in touch. Thank you.
Okay, have a good afternoon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pronto. Tivemos a nossa primeira pausa para café. Espero que tenham sentido aqui a importância que nós próprios queremos também ter em relação à Federação Europeia de Franchising. Sem dúvida que pode ser uma grande mais-valia para todos nós, associados, membros, franqueados, franqueadores. É sem dúvida esse o caminho que nós devemos seguir. E todo este networking que a Europa e as associações europeias nos podem proporcionar ser uma grande mais-valia para ajudar as marcas portuguesas a internacionalizar, mas também a ajudar a trazer novos conceitos de negócios para Portugal através de um processo muito mais fácil e muito mais interessante e muito mais apetecível com aquilo que o franchising sabe fazer de bem. Por isso, espero que tenham gostado. Se tiverem alguma dúvida ou alguma questão, não hesitem em falar connosco. Todos os nossos associados são convidados a estarem nestes webinars que são organizados pela Federação Europeia de Franchising. Se quiserem estar presentes, não hesitem. Nós vamos mandando as informações e a agenda e os temas que vão ser debatidos. Na última sessão, que foi feita a semana passada, participaram 12 empresas associadas da APF, o que foi fantástico. A adesão foi muito boa e nós temos muito a aprender com esta troca de informação e de ideias. Estaremos cá agora várias vezes ao longo deste ano com uma pausa para café, todas as semanas sem dúvida, e de preferência provavelmente irá acontecer até mais do que uma vez por semana. Por isso, não deixem de nos acompanhar. Esta pausa para café é só realmente um momento onde nós poderemos conversar um pouquinho e saber como é que o franchising está e quais são os passos que o franchising está a percorrer para o futuro. Obrigada, fiquem bem e até breve.